South Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski. So glad to be back with you live for hour 2 of our program, coming to you on FM, on AM, on our website, aneighborschoice.com. You're listening on podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate it. Give us a review. If you're listening via video platform, make sure you subscribe and join up with what we're doing there. Wherever you're hearing this program, we're glad that we have the opportunity to challenge the toxic groupthink of our time. And joining me now to discuss some of the things that she has been doing to upend the rotten, corrupt establishment of D.C. is journalist and political activist Laura Loomer. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great having you on the program. Now, you have been one of those folks, I think, who was one of the most banned and censored off of every media, social media platform, payment processors. Was that one particular thing you did or multiple different things that they kept getting you subsequently on? How did that all happen?
Well, the thing is, with these social media bans and the deplatforming and cancel culture movement, it's really a criminal conspiracy, right? So what happens is when one company bans you, they kind of work together behind the scenes to use that as justification to ban you on all of the other sites. And we saw that kind of in a more mainstream manner with the deplatforming of President Donald Trump in the aftermath of the stolen 2020 election, when he was banned simultaneously by all of the different social media sites and payment processors and his banks. And I was really the canary in the coal mine for this, and this first happened to me back in 2017. And so I've been living the the canceled, deplatformed lifestyle for about 5 years now, along with others like Alex Jones and people like Nick Fuentes and people who I guess would be classified as controversial, right? Simply because some people don't like what we have to say because they don't like our constitutionally protected speech. But, the fact of the matter is there's no such thing as hate speech, but these left-wing, woke social media companies like Facebook and Twitter and, companies like Google and Apple and Amazon, they've taken it upon themselves to become the arbiters of truth in our society. And they also think that they are now more powerful than any elected body or any elected representative in our country or around the world. And they don't want to respect the will of the people or our own, constitutional republic and our supposed democratic process for electing representatives. And that's why now we have so much big tech election interference. And, we see that elected officials like President Donald Trump or other world leaders or even candidates for Congress like myself, right, we're completely deplatformed and denied access to social media. And so this is why I've continued my fight, right, for free speech. I'm a free speech absolutist. And I was here in D.C., and I'm still in D.C. For these last 2 weeks, holding establishment Republicans accountable, because now that they've taken back the House, somebody needs to hold their feet to the fire to make sure that they're actually going to fulfill their promises.
Yeah, so you are in D.C., and what specifically have you been focused on doing while you're over there to hold people accountable?
Well, I was here during the vote for the Speaker of the House, and I was really focused on trying to make sure that Kevin McCarthy was not selected as Speaker of the House because he's corrupt. He's also the most left-leaning and left-voting GOP member of the House, and he's proven himself to be, a traitor to the GOP base. He's proven himself to be corrupt and unprincipled. He committed illegal election interference by using stolen FTX funds in America First primaries, and he did this to me, right, when I ran for Congress in Florida's 11th district, located in Central Florida, right, when I ran against Rhino Daniel Webster several months ago. And, we don't need any more career politicians in Washington. And so I was confronting even Democrat politicians, asking if they would be willing to hold Kevin McCarthy accountable and investigate him for using and accepting stolen FTX funds and using these to illegally interfere in elections. And, I found it really, really strange. I asked AOC, I asked Steny Hoyer, who, of course, is Nancy Pelosi's, right-hand man. And these Democrats didn't really seem too interested in investigating Kevin McCarthy. And you have to ask yourself, why wouldn't Democrats be interested in speaking out or investigating the most powerful Republican in the country? Because Kevin McCarthy is not a Republican, right? Like I said, he's a Democrat practically. And Kevin McCarthy is also playing for the Democrat side, which is why the Democrats are more than happy with having Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, because we have a uniparty in this country. So I've been really focused on exposing this uniparty system of politics that we have because, I've been a lifelong Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm never going to be a Democrat. I was president of college Republicans, and personally, the current Republican Party isn't even right-wing enough for me, I consider myself to be more of a nationalist, and I'd say I'm more right-wing than anything the GOP currently has to offer. But most Americans right now feel politically homeless. They feel like whatever party they belong to isn't really representing them, right? They're not really actually providing a voice or representation to their constituents, and that's why I'm committed to exposing the uniparty, and I'll be running for Congress again and running against the uniparty. And I'm going to be running as an America First constitutional conservative patriot candidate to provide the constituents of District 11 the representation they deserve. I'm also in D.C. this week helping in some of the January 6th trials. I'm working with the NCLU and my attorney, John Pierce, who's actually representing the most J6 defendants out of any lawyer in the country right now. And so I was at court with him today at the D.C. federal courthouse where we were, defending some of these January 6th political prisoners. And today also, there were several other trials for January 6th political prisoners taking place. You had the Proud Boys trial that was also happening around the same time. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to get to Congress was, to fight for the civil rights and the free speech rights of Americans who are being persecuted by our federal government. Political dissidents who are being made to be political prisoners by our own government and the federal law enforcement agencies. And so I'm going to be helping to fundraise for legal defense funds for some of these Americans who have been financially destroyed, who are essentially political prisoners in the D.C. Gulag. And I'm helping provide them client advocacy with NCLU and helping ensure that we can try to find effective appeals for them so that they don't go to jail and they can get freedom, because I don't believe that any of the January 6th political prisoners did anything wrong. I do believe that these people are patriots.
Now, so what is the likelihood? I mean, have they been able to access some of the evidence that suggests this could have been some type of entrapment type situation where the federal contractors or agents were using classic crowd manipulation techniques? I mean, you could do this. I mean, there was already, of course, a context by which people were livid about what was going on with the election situation.
Well,
but you could turn a soccer crowd into a very violent thing with a couple, professional agitators.
Well, look, now that the Republicans have taken control of the House, it's a lot of talk, right? This is how it is every time the Republicans take control of the House. And what we need to understand is that all Republican legislation is going to be killed in the Senate. So they really have no power. They keep talking about investigations, but one of the things that I noticed is none of the concessions that any of these GOP holdouts bargained for, none of them included anything for the January 6th political prisoners. And so I would really like to see, the GOP House and, these Republicans fight for the release of the 14,000 hours of surveillance footage from January 6th in the Capitol. I would really like to, see some of the surveillance footage released so that we can see, there's been whistleblowers and individuals come out about federal informants and, claims that the FBI helped facilitate, a lot of the activities on January 6th. There's video footage that shows some Capitol police officers allowing for people to walk inside the Capitol. So I think that it's imperative that Republicans stand firm on this. I believe that the January 6th witch hunt committee needs to be completely dissolved, and that the Republicans need to push for a total release, uncensored, unredacted, 14,000 hours of the footage. It's in the public's interest, and I think that all of these political prisoners should be pardoned.
Yeah, we certainly can see that they have a vicious disregard for basic human rights and dignity with the way they've been treating these prisoners in really inhumane and torturous conditions. They have a lot of hate for a lot of the folks who were at that event. The values of things like constitutionalism or populism or libertarianism have all been things that folks in D.C. really want to pulverize and rub people's faces in suffering. Why do you think they have such contempt for those individuals in this country that share those types of views?
Well, we clearly are not living in a free country anymore, right? We don't have freedom of association. We don't have free speech. We don't have a free market economy anymore. We certainly don't have freedom of association. So they're taking advantage of, this weaponization of government. And I will say, even though the Republicans don't have any real legitimate power right now, given the fact that everything's going to be killed in the Senate, they were right in their mindset of wanting to create a committee on combating the weaponization of the federal government, because that is exactly what's happening right now, right? I mean, we're seeing a weaponization of our government. It's like a Gestapo-style force, right? It is a Gestapo force that's been weaponized for the Democrats to go after any and all political opposition and dissident voices in this country, to scare people into, expressing any type of opposition to the current regime. And that's why they're aggressively going after these people and violating their free speech rights and their civil rights. And that's why it doesn't really seem like we have much due process in this country. And, as somebody who's been watching these trials play out and has, myself, like over the last several years, been a deplatformed, silenced individual targeted by the FBI. And, certainly I've been denied my due process in court, and I have many friends who have also been silenced and denied due process. I'd say that we really are living in a banana republic.
Yeah, it's certainly a rapidly delegitimizing regime. You have been recently restored to your Twitter account, but you have had some real run-ins with these social media platforms that still, of course, won't show any type of balance or restoration of certain people's accounts, such as yourself on other outlets. We on this program have been banned and deleted off of YouTube and other outlets, Facebook and stuff. So what do you think is the real heart? How do you actually take on that whole social media, cartel? Do you break them up? How do you think that would actually be done?
Well, I think that we need to repeal Section 230, but, that's a federal law that, it needs to be repealed. And I don't really see how that's going to happen right now with, kind of a divided government right now with Republicans in the House, Democrats in the Senate. Nothing. We're just going to have total gridlock over these next few years. And, as much as you have politicians on both sides of the aisle who sometimes bloviate, right, about big tech, I think that the Democrats as a whole have come to a consensus that, censoring people and utilizing big tech as an electoral strategy to silence your opposition. And I think even the Republicans do this too, right? Because they all knew that I was deplatformed. I was the only deplatformed candidate this last election season, the first in U.S. history, especially in 2020 when I first filed to run. And nobody in the Republican Party, with the exception of Congressman Paul Gosar, stood up for me and, asked for me to be reinstated. And even when I won my primary and was endorsed by Trump, nothing happened. So, this is a huge problem. Both parties are benefiting from big tech election interference. Both parties are completely sold out and bought off by big tech. If you look at their FEC reports, they're all taking enormous contributions. Some of the top GOP lobbyists who have access to Kevin McCarthy, I'm talking about people like Jeff Miller, Kevin McCarthy's best friend, and people like Frank Luntz, who's also Kevin McCarthy's roommate. They get paid a ton of money to represent big tech. And, of course, they're utilizing their influence to make sure that Republican leadership does not regulate big tech. So it's kabuki theater. It's empty promises from Republicans who, tell Republicans one thing in an election year, that they're going to, combat censorship of conservatives. But have any lawsuits been filed? No. What has the Republican Party done with the nearly $1 billion they raised since the stolen election? Did they file any lawsuits about the banning of President Trump? No. Has the Republican Party helped amplify my RICO case against Twitter and Facebook and the FBI and P&G and Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey? No. Wow. So, both parties are in on this corruption. Both parties are in on the civil rights and free speech violations. And, I think that I get a lot of heat as a Republican for calling out my own party. And people say, oh, you must be some kind of Democrat plant because all you ever do is bash Republicans. No. How are we supposed to hold the Democrats accountable if we can't even hold ourselves accountable, right? You gotta have accountability in your own house before you start talking about other people's houses. So, I am conservative. I'm a patriot. I'm an America First constitutional conservative, and I'm disgusted with the current Republican Party. I am a registered Republican, but am I happy with the Republican Party? Absolutely not.
Let's go back to what you said there about keeping the Republicans accountable. You had mentioned earlier that you saw that Kevin McCarthy had used stolen FTX money to help defeat you in the primary. Can you expand on what you're talking about there?
Yeah, so, there was the scandal with the Sam Bankman-Fried. For some people who may not be familiar with what I'm talking about, Sam Bankman-Fried and this cryptocurrency scam where you had Sam Bankman-Fried, who was running this, multi-billion-dollar FTX crypto scam where he, had all of these, very famous individuals investing millions of dollars into this exchange, and then ultimately he was using these funds to donate millions of dollars of this FTX cryptocurrency to politicians in this last midterm election season. And he gave millions of dollars to the Democrats and millions of dollars to Republicans. He was actually the second largest donor to Democrats after George Soros. But he also gave a ton of money to Republicans, right? He gave $2.6 million to the Congressional Leadership Fund, which was, the path directed by Kevin McCarthy, which interfered directly in the primary campaigns, GOP primaries. And I was one of the America First candidates who had this stolen FTX money utilized against me in my primary to interfere in my race. And the NRCC and, the RNC constantly lies and says that they don't interfere in primaries, but they do. And now, of course, the Sam Bankman-Fried individual was arrested in the Bahamas, for this giant Ponzi scheme. And And none of these politicians who accepted stolen FTX funds and utilized this money to influence our elections have been held accountable. And it's a huge problem because, last election season we talked about Zuckerbucks, right? And everybody was outraged about it. And now, right, what's the new issue? What's the new financial fraud that's being committed in these races? It's the use of stolen FTX. And so we have a lot of financial campaign finance fraud that's being committed by both sides, right? The Democrats and the Republicans. And the Republicans only want to talk about it when the Democrats do it, but the Republicans took this money as well. McCarthy took this money. And so how is a guy who sabotaged intentionally the red wave by killing off the most viable America First candidates, okay? And Mitch McConnell did the same exact thing, costing us the Senate. Why should these people be in leadership positions? Why should these people not be in prison when what they've done is a violation of campaign finance laws? Okay, these were funds that were clearly stolen. Now that we know that, this whole Ponzi scheme that was being run by Sam Bankman-Fried was completely fraudulent. These were stolen funds. People were ripped off. This is illegal. And as Republicans, we have a responsibility, an ethical and a moral responsibility, not just to hold the Democrats accountable for using this money, but also the Republicans who took this money, people like Kevin McCarthy.
By the way, I know that you've been deplatformed from a lot of institutions. Have you been debanked too?
Yes.
How about J.P. Morgan Chase?
I had been shut down. Yes. Yeah, J.P. Morgan Chase had shut down my online access to my online bank account in 2019, and then it became a big scandal. And then I was banned by PayPal and Venmo and GoFundMe in 2019, and in 2018 by GoFundMe. I've been banned on Cash App, and yes, I've been targeted by the financial institutions, and it's been very devastating to my ability to make a living.
Well, I just want to get you to.
The Republicans have done nothing to address this.
I want to get you to react real quick. We're almost out of time, but this story from lawandcrime.com about the Virgin Islands Attorney General, how she loses her job days after suing J.P. Morgan Chase in connection with the Jeffrey Epstein probe that she had launched to try to figure out what's going on with why they kept his account with them way after they knew what he was up to with the horrific crimes he was engaged in. I wanted to get your thoughts. I don't even know what you did at the time, but why Chase Bank doesn't want you to work with them, but they were happy to work with Jeffrey Epstein while he engaged in looked like international child trafficking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're happy to work with Jeffrey Epstein, but then they ban high-profile conservatives. They banned Ye, right, formerly known as Kanye West. So why is that, right? Why are they okay to work with human trafficker rapists, right? But then they want to ban outspoken conservatives and Trump supporters and people who express controversial, nonviolent, constitutionally protected speech. So we have a serious problem in this country, and it's because the management of these organizations, right? They're progressives, they're woke. When you look at J.P. Morgan Chase, you see Jamie Dimon. After Charlottesville, he gave over $1 million to the SPLC, which makes it its own mission to target conservatives. So you just have to follow the money, and you see that these are all woke, progressive organizations and institutions who have a political agenda to go after people on the right.
Well, Laura Loomer, it's been great speaking with you, and we'll keep up with what you've got going on with your different activist works and your campaigns.